Gen Z employees expect to be developed on the job. And if they don't have it, they leave. If people are developed on the job, they're less likely to leave. Then you have people who really see and treat the business as their own business and are trying to find efficiencies, find savings, do things better. And then once you have that kind of ownership, it's crazy easy to hire other people, and they might bring in a friend or an old colleague, and you might end up spending zero on recruiting because it's so easy to pull in great people because everyone wants to work at a place where they're rocking and rolling and keep getting promoted or, making a big impact. They can talk about the sales they drove at this organization or whatever.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into super clinic owners. I'm one of your hosts, Jennifer Gligoric, and today you're going to be here with me with a guest who understands just how much turnover is costing clinic owners and how to fix it. She's the founder of Terawatt, a forward-thinking marketplace helping employers reduce employee turnover and drive long-term organizational success through high-impact coaching. She helps clinics retain more of their earnings by reducing turnover year after year. So let's give a big super clinic welcome to Francie Jain of Terawatt. Thank you for being here today, Francie.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So let's talk about that. A lot of people don't think about how much turnover costs them, or they know it does, but they're like, but I'm still small, so maybe I can't really, this is just the price you pay for, being a smaller, business. And I'm like, no, that's not really it. So tell us a little bit about how the other costs of turnover that maybe our clinic owners aren't thinking about.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on how you acquire, you first hire people, right? So you have to think about the channels you pay for get resumes. So some people might do an Indeed, or some people might have a headhunter, right? So those are the sort of the very obvious fees that you pay to get a new hire. But then there's also onboarding costs. And then there's training costs. And how long does it take for the person to be fully up to speed? So I'd say those are the direct costs. And then you have the indirect costs of, are they contributing to a positive culture? Are they detracting from a positive culture? Are they helping lower your error rate? Or are they raising your error rate? One of the things that goes into a lot of the calculations, you can kind of do two kinds. Like I said, you can do this direct kind of calculation or this indirect. And that's sort of the thing's a little bit harder to quantify, but then you add it to the direct. And I think the main issue is that it's just really important to understand what you're spending on turnover costs. And I think for a lot of, and really small businesses, big businesses, what they kind of do is they'll look at turnover as an individual problem, not as a systemic problem. And so it's not it only costs maybe 30% of this person's salary to rehire another person. That may be true, but how many people are you rehiring in a year? And what if that whole expense of rehiring and training and, culture drag, what if you had to spend any of that money, and how much could you reinvest that into the business? You could either reinvest that in R&D, in equipment, in salaries, in rent. There are all these different things you could do. And so it's not just that you're not spending on hiring more people, but it also means that the people you have are firing on all cylinders. And you're more likely to be just rocking and rolling and having a low drama environment than if you keep having people come and go. And so a lot of times people say, of course I want that. Why wouldn't I want that? But what people don't exactly realize is it's just because we just don't know. I mean, it's kind of new research, but that There's a lot of human capital research that shows there's a relationship between professional development of employees, meaning helping them grow to the next level or helping them get better at a deficiency. So that's like two definitions that kind of have. There's a relationship between that and people staying. And it's kind of, there are stories about this from, the Navy. There's stories about this from Kmart or small businesses. It's really everywhere because it's like humans want to grow and they want to get better and they want the opportunity to grow. And it used to be when we were young employees that our bosses thought, well, I'm not going to pay for you to get better at your job because that will just make you more valuable and then you'll leave. That was like a very common baby boomer perspective.
Very much. Mm-hmm.
Right. And what's funny is that now Gen Z employees expect to be developed on the job. And if they don't have it, they leave. And so what's funny is that, what's happening is that if people are developed on the job, they're less likely to leave. And it's kind of it's the opposite of what the baby boomers kind of thought. And I think the reason is that perspective had been very widget driven. Like, oh, well, this person's not working out. It's their fault. Let's just get another person. Maybe it's a systemic problem, And so if you start to address the systemic issues and make it work for everyone, then you have people who really see and treat the business as their own business and are trying to find efficiencies, find savings, do things better. And then once you have that kind of ownership, it's crazy easy to hire other people, and they might bring in a friend or an old colleague, and you might end up spending zero on recruiting because it's so easy to pull in great people because everyone wants to work at a place where they're rocking and rolling and keep getting promoted or, making a big impact. They can talk about the sales they drove with this organization or whatever. It's really finding a way to help them grow. And then the other part I just add is, as people listening to this, they're probably thinking, oh my God, that's so expensive. I don't have the money for this. And here's the thing. It can be expensive, but the way to think about it really is it's not like you're buying everyone and who works with you a new couch. You're investing in your business. So whatever you do to make them better at their job, that also is coming down to the bottom line in your business. So even if you're spending $1,000 a person per year, $500 a person per year, that compounds to your organization. So it's not like money's flying out the door, it returns. And so that's the way to really think about it.
Yeah, see, and I would really urge the clinic owners listening to this to not think about this. Well, that's great for big organizations. That is a limiting belief. I'm going to tell you, this is great for a one-person clinic. You're going to invest in yourself. Even if it's just you're right. Still having to do continuing education. You're still having to learn new skills. You're still probably going to get a coach or a mentor. And that's okay for you, but you need to think about it even for the other people that you bring in. And if you're like, well, there is no growth. Well, if you already know you have a business that you'll never grow, you'll never make another dime, why are you in business? The idea should be, I want to have a business where I grow and I make more money and I make bigger impacts. And if I get to where I'm so good at it, maybe I'll open up another location or maybe I'll sell. That'll be my exit plan. But even then, there's growth potential for the people in there. Maybe they'll be the one that'll buy the business.
Oh, love that. Yeah,
no
love that.
matter how small you are, if you have that sort of growth mindset, then you're going to attract people who have that. And if you invest in them, you're going to say and it's not just about saving the money. It's about using your money most effectively so that you're not wasting money on turnover. Right?
Yeah. So, and here, let me add another dollars. Let's put dollars to this. Okay, let's say as an owner, you're willing to hire a coach you consider very expensive. I'll just make up a number. Maybe the coach is $300 an hour for one-on-one coaching. We're not saying hire that one-on-one coaching for all your employees. What we're saying is take that same employee, maybe that same content, and divide it by 20 employees, divide it by 5 employees. So the idea is that you might, as the owner, feel like you need a lot of much more hand holding. And so you're willing to invest in the much more high impact one-on-one coaching. But what we really love is the idea of taking experts and sharing them so that on a per person basis, it's a lot more affordable.
Yeah. And there are many different programs. Like the program that we have a live workshop. So it's basically office hours. And we'll do it certain times during the week, different subjects. They're all live. And any of our clients or their staff can bring a challenge. And then we walk them through that challenge, right? Whether it's sales training or whatever. But the idea is, it boggles my mind that more of our clients that are in this program, get your staff in it, that the staff won't take advantage of it. We're like, I don't have the time. You don't have the time not to do this, right? Like, well, no, I've got to be looking at this email or looking at this widget and, staring at something else. But yet, well, why aren't we developing that time for them?
Yes. Okay. And
you'll let that person leave and then tell the one person that has to train everybody else. You'll pull on training someone else, give them 2 full-time jobs, training and the job they'll do. And you won't even think about the burden that you've placed on them. But you could have stopped all of that if you would have allowed new people or even existing people to have maybe 30 minutes in a day on a Tuesday to attend a training.
Yeah, let me jump in now. 100%. So again, like with the baby boomer perspective, when I was a young worker, it definitely was any professional development that is on your own time. Like that's not, you're paying for that and that's not what I pay you for. Now the philosophy is it should happen during the workday. So it should be in the course of business. And so what happens a lot of times that I see is a lot of these, group sessions seem to be happening over lunchtime. So you can actually like maybe bring a sandwich to work or you run out and grab a sandwich or whatever, but you're able to like eat during the thing. So even maybe if you take an hour during the day, it's a break you would have had anyway, or it's like your coffee break or whatever. And the idea is it's just like built into your schedule, like a doctor's appointment or something, right? So like the more that you can think about that it's helping the business and an hour a week or every other week is not really a sacrifice. Again, it's like an investment in making everyone better.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is like, so was it Walmart? It was one of these really large organizations like that. And they figured out that doing like credentialing, like you got a badge if you learn different things. And that became really popular. Like, again, like I never would have thought that to be the case, but they would like, you get your badge for like psychological safety or your badge, whatever, like you took 10 classes in this or whatever hours. I'm not sure how they did it exactly, but the idea was that people really, again, it's the same thing. They like to show like they've done a lot of work on themselves. They have these credentials. They really understand these other areas and you just need to get like a little bit creative about how, like maybe if you get like 5 badges, you can get a promotion or you get like a raise per hour or, what I mean? There might be some relationship to like the work they're putting into, or like there's some bonus pool, or what I mean? They're get creative to like what you can offer them for their efforts.
Right, because people want, and it's a gamified experience. That's really what it is. You're gamifying the experience of working in some way, but also too, it's to motivate them to get more knowledge so that they can be of better use for the organization. Right, so. That can still happen at the clinic level. It could be like, hey, we need to do this role play, or you can have it available. There is online things that you can do in any sort of a clinic setting to get people better at the computer, better trained. I mean, every EHR program that's out there, they have something that goes along with it, McKesson or Jain or whatever, and you could become Jain certified, like go through the training. Exactly. So how to do that EHR, right? There's just a lot of things. There's a lot of return on your investment, though. And so I wanted to ask you about that. You talk about tracking on that return of investment for learning and development. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because really at the end of the day, for the owner, they're going to want to know, well, where's my return on investment for all of that? So can you talk about that, the return on investment for learning and development?
Yeah. So basically what you have to do in order to really like have the numbers behind this is you have to spend a bit of time being really clear on like what the current state is costing you. And that's why you want to know like over the year, how many people are you hiring? How many people are you onboarding? You're assigning costs to these things so that when you start to make a change, you can really track like what's changed from there. So the first thing is to like really start to quantify like what's happening in your business right now. And like the basic one is like how many people are hiring, how many people are quitting, how many people are you firing. That's interesting too. Like, is it voluntary turnover or involuntary turnover? Because that might have a different problem, but that's good, important to know. And then you can also start to look at your comps. Like for instance, one of the interesting things, like I always pay attention to hospitals. So if someone's in the healthcare space, if they have over 20% voluntary employee turnover, that's higher than the hospital average, right? The hospital averages are 20%. Like there's some number like it's like retail food, like McDonald's or whatever, has some crazy high like turnover. It's like 65% or something crazy. But so I know it's crazy. But you want to know like what your industry is doing, because like it gives you a little more incentive to lower it if you're higher than your industry average. Like you ideally like to be below the average, right? If you're average, you're like, okay, listen, like I'm just doing the basics of what the average person in my space does. So it's just good to know, like, do I care to change? Would I like to save this money and do something else with it? Or is it like something a cost I'm willing to bear? And so that's something to think about. I think the other thing that's really cool is and it depends on how big the clinics are. So you're kind of alluding, there might be like 1 or 2 people clinics and there might be bigger ones. But the way that we like to track is like, if you're able, the ideal situation is if you're able to like separate at least 2 groups. So like one group's getting coaching and one group's not getting coaching, and track over time what's changing in those 2 groups. And it's almost like a time series, right? So let's say one group gets coaching in January and February, the other doesn't get coaching in January and February, but both of them took the same survey, let's say in December. Then maybe there's like another same survey in like March. And then you're looking at retention, you're looking at employee turnover, you're looking at, other metrics like errors or client data, and see if that's somehow related. And then you start to figure out metrics that are really specific to your business and how it's impacting them. And you might say, oh, wow, that's awesome. Look, we reduced turnover in the group that got coaching by 1 to 2% in the first quarter. Like, that's awesome. Like, so I have a question, like, do you think we can like add 1 to 2% again the next quarter? Or is that kind of the max we can do for the year? So then you can start to test that. And then you can see, oh, wow, look at that. Like the group that had lower turnover, they were more efficient. They like saved money on marketing, or, I just make up these things, but like you might start to see some changes in what's happening between those groups. And that's the real like sauce, like the secret sauce, is when you're able to see like how you can, put the gas more and make those changes do more. Or if it's like, for some reason, it's going in a direction you don't want. Like what happens if it were proving the baby boomers' perspective that it would make you more valuable and want to leave, then the group getting coaching should have more voluntary turnover than the group that doesn't get coaching. And so you can look at that and test it. And then what's cool is if you feel like the group getting professional development or whatever the thing is, coaching, and it's doing good things for your business, then you can say, you know what, that's worth then rolling it out to everyone, and then starting to just tweak it and make it better for people and have more feedback from what the employees want. I mean, that's, by the way, another secret sauce in this, that it seems so obvious. And I think when you're running a business, you're just trying to do the best you can. But there often is a disconnect between the buyer of professional development and the recipient of professional development. And so we have a process where when someone hires us, we actually send out a survey, a custom survey to the employees they want to have the coaching, because we found that when people opine on what they want and they vote for it and they talk about what's important to them and what will be helpful to them, that can often be different than the person buying it, because they just don't live.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because you think, well, everyone's heart's in the right place. Like you're, trying to solve for these people, but it's fascinating how they see it differently. And so we've seen this before. And another thing it does is that it means that so the employees then are voting for what they want and telling you what they want. And then you say, okay, here's the data. This is what you guys voted for. Guess what? We're bringing that person in to help you. And then the engagement is so high when you finally have them meeting with somebody, because it's exactly what they wanted. And so then everyone's much more engaged and much more interested as opposed to sitting back with their arms, crossed saying, well, I don't want to do this. This is not what I wanted to do. And like you can imagine, when you're in a room full of people who didn't choose to be there, they kind of get annoyed, even though you might be bringing them something very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had it. We've enrolled clients when we've had the employees on the onboarding call, and I've had it both ways. I've had them there taking notes, asking great questions, like they are ready. They're sick of where they're at. They want to fix things, and then other ones that are just like, when can I go to lunch? And the difference in who hits their goals and who's able to drastically increase the revenue and the patient satisfaction is exactly where you would think it'd be. The people who are checked out, they're not going to hit the goals. The people who are into it they're totally into it. And you can do this again. I want to say you can do this in any single level that you want, whether you've got one staff or whatever, just saying that, hey, even if you're hiring for your first person, training is really important here. We're always going to be trying to improve. Yeah. Well, that's a lot different than how it is in most places where you're just like, just learn the job. We understand this contractual. We pay you and you are here. Well, it is. That's how it is. But you can also develop a little bit better culture than that.
Well, the other thing I'll say is I think it's really hard when you're a business owner and you have to accept feedback from your employees. Yeah. I mean, I've been in that position many times. And I think you have to kind of get to this place where like all you care about is doing better tomorrow. And so if someone can come up with a process, an idea that makes it better tomorrow, that is like gold, right? Because you can't do everything and everyone's going to see the world differently. And that person who's an employee might actually have really good ideas because they're on the front lines with the customer and they might see ways to simplify it and find efficiencies. And I would just add that sometimes it's also like a bit of an ego change for the owner because they have to realize they don't have all the answers. And once you start doing that, also that really does change the culture. And I think people again feel like, oh, I'm making a difference. Like, wow, that was cool. I had this great idea. And we did it. And look how great it turned out, because that is like a bullet point on their resume.
Yeah, it is. And
grow.
And sometimes it doesn't work, but at least if you're willing to listen and they come to you with a fully fleshed idea. So you just need to say, okay, in order for us to enact an idea, you have to think about the cost of it, what we're going to need to do with the idea. As long as you can't just say, well, you never listened to me. Well, you've just come with me with these wild or crazy ideas, but you didn't know how to do it or whatever. And then I'm supposed to figure it all out when that's not even my idea. Right. So, and one good thing you can do is empower them by giving them guidelines. I will look at, if you think we can have a better computer system, then find out how much a new one costs. What do you think the downtime's going to be? Get all the information to me and let's talk about that. Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, make them do a little bit of the legwork for it. If you put your time and effort instead of may not put your money behind it. That's me. You're asking me to spend my money, but where's your due diligence? Like if you really believe in it, prove that you really believe in it.
Yeah, or come to me and when you've gotten as far as you can go on your own. There could be situations where there are many forks in the road where listen, it turns out there are these 4 options that I found, and I'm not really sure how to evaluate them. Can we sit down together and you can give me your feedback, and then I can kind of know what is important to you, or that kind of thing. I think the more you have sort of dialogue of fixing it to make the organization better, because the owner is always looking for that, right? But the employee has to see kind of what's in it for them, and I think what's in it for them is leadership and growth and impact, and someone listening to them.
Yeah. And the idea of if we save the money, you're absolutely right. The what's in it for them. And I think that what's in it for them, as well as being risk avoidant, is what stops a lot of owners from allowing that sort of open communication to go, because they're a little bit afraid. Well, if we do it, then what are they going to want? And if you figure it out ahead of time, and you say, okay, but if we do this, then this is what I'm willing to do or whatever. And if they had some crazy idea, you're going to give them half the business just because they picked a new CRM, right?
Exactly.
Then that's going to come out ahead of time. So
I do think that, 100%. But I do think that's the kind of thing where like the more that you can think about what are ways, and maybe it's a gamification type thing, or what are ways that can make a person who's proposing this feel good about what they're doing and like they've accomplished something and like they've got something out of it. And it's definitely not going to be like, I'm getting you 50% equity. I love that example. I'm sure a lot of 22-year-olds would like that. But I think it's like, maybe it's like a step toward a promotion, I mean, I would think that if you're able to identify a real problem where you find efficiencies and you're able to make a huge contribution to the business, at least get a title change.
Yeah, get something. I mean,
what changes?
Well, you can get a bonus. You can get a bonus for it. Right. If you've done it, give a little bit of a bonus. It may not be a lot, but as long as you clear the expectations with what you can afford and it aligns with the goals that you have already stated. So, number one, does your business have goals? Does everyone in the business understand that this month we said we wanted to get 10 new patients and I would like to grow by 10% every month? And we understand we're going to have to hire people and we might even need to get another machine in here or we'll take over this other suite. But these are the goals. And anywhere someone can help me with this, then let's talk about it, right? Yeah. And as long as it's clearly stated and you're open, then you can work towards it. But these are all things that getting back to what we've been talking about is preventing turnover, right? It is very expensive it's number one, it's expensive to keep the wrong people in the wrong jobs, paying them the wrong amount. Yeah. I mean, sometimes letting them go is the smartest move you could possibly do because they're not a good fit. And they're such a broken cog in your wheel. The wheel isn't even moving anymore and the machine is about to overheat and explode. Right. But when you can when you can really dial into this idea of turnover and doing that, you figure out very quickly who the bad cogs are. They're not giving you any feedback. They don't seem to really care. They really want to be somewhere else. And you have to let go of that fear but good people are just so hard to find. Not when you're really dialed into what a good person actually is. Yeah. And a lot of times you might need it. I mean, of course, I'm a coach. I believe you should have a coach. I have my own coach. I have a coach. I have a coach and I have a mentor. Because I need that in what I do. So I don't even begin to know how a clinic owner, one of our listeners or any owner can do it without having someone else leading them, Yeah. And I would say that, again, it's like all this stuff. I think the more you just think about it and get a little bit creative, like, I think it could maybe even if the part of the fear of really like expecting a lot from employees is because it's hard to find people. I think what you start to do is say things like, we are looking for, growth-minded, you're really explicit about what the kind of behaviors in what you're looking for. And then I think there's also something about, like opportunity for bonuses for real contribution to the business. One thought I had, I don't know if this is appropriate to clinics, but what if there's almost like a bonus pool where if your clinic is making over a certain amount, there's like, employees get a portion of that. Oh, no, I highly recommend that idea. Yeah. That gets everybody motivated to the end goal. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would like if I had a job like that and they were like, okay, well, if you're coming up with new ideas that save us money or that generate you get for every new idea that gets implemented, you get like 1% of the bonus pool at the end of the year. I would be so all over that as an employee because I'd be so motivated to come up with great ideas. And like maybe you're then it gets annoying because everyone's like pitching ideas. But like that's better than the alternative.
Then no one's saying anything and no one realizing there's an issue. Like how do we get new patients? How do we increase patient compliance throughout our program? What can we do to make our actual fulfillment? What about wellness when they're done? How do we get people to keep on wanting to come back or referring to us? Especially if you're still in the insurance game and you have so many rules against referrals or anything else. So you have to be aggressively thinking it outside of the box. Anyway, guys, we've been talking to Francie Jain. She's with Terawatt, and we're actually getting to the end. See, I could still talk to you for a long time because these are lots of things that these are discussions we need to be having as clinic owners. And where can they go to find out more from you? Is it terawatt.com? Give us your link.
Yeah, so it's actually terawatt.co. There's someone like squatting on terawatt.com. Frustration. So it's just TERAWATT. And so it's terawatt.co. And then I'm Francie Jain, JAIN. And I'm also really active on LinkedIn. And we have a lot on LinkedIn as well. And so those are probably the two best places to find me. And then we're also starting to speak at some conferences. So, let me know if that would be helpful for anyone. But those are probably the best places.
Okay. And guys, you can go to superclinic.com. Once you go there, click on our free school, and we'll have this episode and all the information about Francie, where to find her on them. So all you have to do is go to us, but you'll get to her. But if you're like in the car and you want to go to her right now, then there you go. And when you're listening to us, please, as Rory says, there's a fee. You don't have to pay any money to listen to us, but please pay the fee and comment, and please rate and review us. Those 5-star reviews help us getting incredible guests like Francie here on the show. And we hope that you have a great Super Clinic week. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Francie. Bye-bye.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project podcast.